It was a cold night in the mountains. John sat by the fire, his eyes on the flames. His wife Sarah was reading a book, and their dog Max was sleeping on the rug. Everything was peaceful, quiet, and normal, until they heard a knock at the door. It was soft, like someone afraid to knock too hard. John looked at Sarah, surprised. No one came here at night. They lived far from the city, deep in the forest. Who could it be? Max lifted his head and growled low. That was not a good sign. Oh. John slowly stood up, took a flashlight, and walked to the door. Sarah followed him, holding her breath. He opened the door just a little. Outside stood a tall woman, not human. Her skin was light silver, glowing softly in the dark. Her eyes were big and full of fear. She held the hand of a little girl who looked just like her. The woman spoke in a weak voice. "I ran away from my husband. Please let me in," she said. John didn't move. He was frozen, confused, unsure. An alien was standing at his door, asking for help. This couldn't be real. The woman looked over her shoulder, scared. The girl hid behind her mother's legs, silent, watching them. Sarah stepped forward. "She's scared. John, we should help her." But John shook his head. "What if it's a trick?" he whispered. "What if others are coming?" He looked up at the sky. Something flew across. A strange object with blinking red lights, a drone, not from Earth. It hovered for a moment, then disappeared behind the trees. John knew now she was being hunted. Elra looked into his eyes. "My husband will find us," she said. "He never stops." Her voice trembled. "I had no choice. I had to escape. My daughter is not safe with him." Sarah opened the door wider. "Come in," she said, pulling them inside. John locked the door quickly and turned off the lights. The room was dark, only the fire glowing. Max sniffed the girl, but didn't growl anymore. Elra sat on the floor with her daughter. She looked tired, her clothes torn, her arm bleeding. Sarah ran to get a first aid box. John stood near the window, watching the sky. He felt like something terrible was about to happen. The little girl looked at Max, then at the fire. She whispered something in a strange language. The fire flickered, brighter for a moment. Sarah looked at her, shocked. "Did she do that?" she asked. Elra nodded. "She's not normal," she said. "She was born with power. Power her father wants to control. She can feel danger, see things before they happen. She's just a child, but he wants to turn her into a weapon." John couldn't believe what he was hearing. He had heard stories of alien wars, of hidden species, but this was real. In his home, why come to Earth? He asked. "Because Earth is still free," Elra said. "He hasn't touched it yet." Suddenly, the power went out. The house became silent. Only the sound of the wind outside. Sarah grabbed a candle, her hands shaking. John went to the back door, checked the locks. He felt something move outside. Elra stood up quickly, pulling her daughter close. "They found us," she said. "We have to hide?" John opened the basement door. "This way," he said. "Go down, quickly." They rushed down the stairs into the cold basement. The little girl looked up, her eyes glowing softly in the dark. She pointed at the wall. "There's someone outside," she whispered. John held his breath, listening. Footsteps, soft, slow, near the house. Then, a deep voice outside, speaking in another language. Elra's eyes filled with fear. "It's him," she whispered. "He's here." The daughter hugged her tightly. Trembling, John picked up an old rifle from the shelf. He didn't know if it would help, but he had to protect his family. And now, these two strangers, outside. The wind howled louder. The voice came again, closer to the door. Elra looked at John. "If he takes her," she said, "he will burn your planet to find her again." John nodded slowly. Not just a visitor, not just a refugee. They had brought war with them, and now Earth was part of it. The basement was cold and dark. John stood near the stairs, holding his old rifle tightly. The alien woman, Elra, sat on a blanket with her daughter in her arms. Sarah lit a candle and placed it between them. Its small light danced across their worried faces. The little girl looked calm now, but Elra's eyes were watching the ceiling. She could feel it. Danger was still above them. John whispered, "Is he gone?" Elra shook her head slowly. "He never leaves. He watches." Sarah wrapped a blanket around the child. "What's your name, sweetheart?" she asked gently. The girl didn't speak. She only looked at her mother. Elra answered, "Her name is Leary. She speaks very little." "She is still learning your language." Leary blinked, her glowing eyes reflecting the candlelight. Sarah smiled, even though her hands were still shaking. "She's beautiful," she said. Elra nodded, but there was sadness in her eyes. "She is special," she whispered. "And that is why we had to run." John lowered his gun and sat near them. "You said your husband wants to turn her into a weapon," he said. "Why? What is she?" Elra looked at her daughter, then back at John. "She is not like other children, even from our kind," she said. "She was born from something old, something powerful." Sarah looked confused. "What do you mean?" Elra took a deep breath. "Long ago, in our world, there were stones called the heart shards. They held energy that could change life, create, or destroy. They were lost in a great war, buried forever, but one shard was hidden inside my body without my knowing," she continued. "When I became pregnant, it fused with my daughter, joined with her soul. She is now part of that power." John and Sarah stared at her in silence. They could not understand everything, but they knew it was serious. "Your husband?" John asked. "Is he trying to take her back to use her?" Elra nodded. "He wants to raise her in a lab, train her to obey. He serves the high order. They want to use her to control other worlds. She is young now, but one day she will be able to bend space, change minds, break time." Sarah gasped, looking at Leary again. The girl was quiet, but her presence felt strange now. Powerful. John stood up and paced around. "This is too much," he said. "We're just normal people. We can't fight an alien war." Elra stood up slowly, holding her bleeding arm. "I didn't come here to bring war," she said. "I came to find safety. I searched many stars before coming to Earth. It is one of the last free planets, and one of the few my husband has not destroyed." John looked at her, eyes narrowed. "Then why is he here already?" Elra looked down. "Because the moment I landed, he followed the signal. But he won't leave without her." Suddenly, Leary stood up and touched the wall. She whispered in her alien language, and the wall began to glow. Lines appeared like a map, a star. Map. John stared at it, amazed. "What is that?" he asked. "She's showing you where we've been," Elra said. "Every place we ran to, every place we left behind." John looked closer. There were red marks on some planets, as if they were burned. "What happened here?" he asked. Elra's voice dropped low. "Destroyed," she said. "My husband's forces burned them after we escaped. They want her that badly." Sarah hugged herself, scared. "Why us?" she whispered. "Why did you choose our house?" Leary turned around and looked at Sarah. "Because," she said softly in clear English, "you are kind." It was the first time she spoke. Her voice was small, but it touched Sarah's heart deeply. John walked back to the window, listening. The forest was silent, but that silence felt heavy. He turned to Elra. "What do we do now?" Elra walked toward him, her face calm but firm. "We survive," she said. "We hide, we prepare." John didn't know how. He didn't know what this war meant, but he knew one thing. They had let this woman and child into their home. And now, nothing would ever be the same again. The sun had not yet risen, but the sky outside was turning gray. John stood near the front door with Max, the dog alert and growling low. Elra and her daughter Leary were in the kitchen. Silent, waiting, Sarah packed food, water, and medicine into a bag, her hands shaking. No one had slept that night. They had heard strange sounds, mechanical worry, voices in a language they didn't know, and once, a flash of blue light passed over the cabin roof. Something was looking for them. They are called the Watchers, Elra said softly, scouts sent by him. They don't feel pain, they don't stop. John looked at her. So what now? Do we fight? Elra shook her head. No, not yet. We run. There's a place we can go. Far from here, hidden under the earth, Leary stepped forward, holding a small glowing device. She touched it, and a hologram appeared, a map of the forest. It showed a long path leading to a cave system. I found it when we were falling from orbit. She said, it's safe, for now. John checked his rifle and flashlight. Sarah put the backpack on. Max barked once, warning them something was moving outside. They couldn't wait any longer. John opened the back door slowly. The forest was wet with morning dew. Birds were quiet, as if they too felt the danger. The family moved quickly between the trees. Elra led the way, Leary close behind. Sarah and John kept watch on all sides. They walked for an hour in silence. Then a low hum filled the air. It came from above the trees, like a swarm of metal insects. Elra stopped and looked up, her eyes sharp. They've found us, she whispered. Small machines flew overhead, their red lights blinking. They scanned the ground like hunting dogs. One of them paused, turned around, and flew back in their direction. Leary pulled Sarah behind a rock. John raised his gun, but Elra grabbed his arm. No sound, she said. They hear everything. The drone passed. Overhead again. This time slower, it let out a screeching noise, and more came flying from the clouds. They had been marked. The chase had begun. Run, Elra said, grabbing Leary's hand. They ran through the forest. The drones behind them. John fired once. The bullet hit one of the machines. It sparked, spun, and exploded. But two more took its place. Sarah tripped on a root. Leary helped her up quickly. John turned and saw metal claws reaching for Max. He shouted, Max, go! The dog leaped and bit one of the claws. The drone went crashing into a tree. They reached the side of a rocky hill. Leary pressed her hand against the stone. A line of light appeared, and a small doorway opened. Inside, she shouted. They all rushed in, and the door shut behind them. Darkness filled the tunnel. Only Leary's hand lit the way. Glowing with blue light, John leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Sarah hugged Max tightly. Elra sat down and held Leary close. That was close, John said. Elra nodded. Too close, they are getting. Faster, she added, and smarter, this place. Sarah asked, how safe is it? It used to be an old station, Elra replied. Built by my kind, long ago. When we first visited Earth in peace, no one remembers it now. They covered it in stone and left. They walked deeper into the tunnel. Metal walls appeared under the earth, strange symbols on them. Leary touched one symbol, and lights turned on, not like human lights, soft and warm. The space opened into a round room with seats and a table. John looked around. Feels like a spaceship crashed here. It was a scout ship, Elra said. But we turned it into shelter. Sarah sat down, her legs shaking. I can't believe this is real, she whispered. Elra gave her water. It is now, she said gently. John looked at the glowing panel on the wall. It showed a map of Earth and blinking red dots. They've placed trackers, he said. They know our area. Elra's face went pale. They won't stop, she said. Not until they take her. Leary sat in a corner, holding a small crystal. She whispered something in her own language. Then she looked up and said in English, "He's coming, soon." John clenched his fists. "What does he want?" he asked. Elra stood and walked to him. "He doesn't want a daughter." She said, "He wants a tool, a weapon," she added. "And if we don't stop him, Earth will burn too." John looked at her. He didn't ask for this fight, but now it was standing at his door. And he had a choice to make, hide or stand. The underground shelter was quiet. Dust hung in the air and the lights flickered softly. John sat on a metal chair. Sharpening his old hunting knife, Sarah leaned against the wall, eyes closed, trying to rest. Elra watched Leary, who sat in the center of the room, her hands glowing. Faintly, "She hasn't moved in an hour," Sarah said, her voice filled with worry. "She's listening," Elra replied. "She can hear things far away, even thoughts." John looked up. "She's just a kid. How can she do that, Elra?" Didn't answer right away. She walked to Leary and gently placed her hand on the girl's shoulder. "She's not just a child," Elra said. "She carries something older than time itself." Sarah frowned. "You mean the heart shard?" Elra nodded. "Yes, but it's no longer just a shard. It's awakened inside her. Learning, growing, she is becoming something new." Leary opened her eyes slowly. They were brighter than before, almost white. "I saw him." She whispered, "He's on the surface. He's close." John stood up fast, reaching for his rifle. Elra didn't move. "We still have time," she said. "He won't find the entrance yet. But we must talk," she added. "You need to understand who she is." Sarah sat down beside her. "Then tell us," she said. "No more secrets." Elra took a deep breath. Her voice steady. "Our people were explorers. Once, she began, we found ancient power hidden across the stars, pieces of creation itself. Some used it for peace, others for control. The heart shards were part of that energy. They could heal or destroy," she said, "change matter, or bend time. They were lost after the war, sealed away, but one shard remained, buried deep in the body of our world. My husband, Commander Vecker, found it first. He planned to use it for war. For control, I didn't know it. Had entered me," she continued, "until I felt Leary move for the first time. She was different, stronger, brighter, even before birth. When she was born, the machines around us shut down. She cried, and time slowed. That's when I knew she wasn't just mine anymore." John listened quietly. It was hard to believe. But he had seen the fire respond to Leary's thoughts. He had watched the drones fall when she became afraid. He had heard her voice echo in his head without speaking. Maybe she really was more than a child. "Can she stop him?" John asked. Elra looked away. "I don't know." She said, "She's still young, still learning. But if Vecker takes her, he will force her to become a weapon." Sarah turned to Leary, who now stood up and walked to the wall. She placed her hand on the metal, and it turned clear like glass. Outside, in the forest above, shadows moved between trees, dark figures. Searching, hunting. Leary stepped back, her face calm. "I can feel him," she said softly. "He wants to break me, to control me. But something inside me is changing." Elra walked to her, holding her gently. "I know, my light," she whispered, "but you must be strong." Suddenly, the shelter lights blinked twice. Then a loud hum filled the air. "They've found the outer shield," John said, gripping his gun. Sarah looked at Leary. "Can you stop them?" she asked. Leary closed her eyes. The room became still. Then the air around her began to move, as if pulled by a silent wind. Her hair floated upward, and her body glowed with soft golden light. The ground vibrated slightly beneath their feet. Far above, the Watcher drones froze in place. Their red eyes dimmed, their metal wings fell silent. Then, one by one, they crashed to the forest floor without a sound. Back in the shelter, Leary opened her eyes again. "They won't see us now," she said. John stared at her, stunned. "You did that?" he said, without touching anything. Leary nodded once. "I didn't destroy them," she said, "just made them sleep." "I don't like hurting things." Elra smiled with tears. In her eyes, she is not like him. She said, "He uses fear, but she uses light. She is hope, not war." Sarah reached out and hugged the child gently. "You're safe here," she whispered, but Leary pulled away, looking serious. "No," she said, "we're not safe yet. He's coming himself now. I can feel his anger." Elra closed her eyes, fear returning to her face. "He would never come down himself," she said. "Unless," John finished her sentence, "unless he's ready to take her by force." The shelter felt colder suddenly. The light dimmed, as if the planet itself knew something was near. A battle was coming. The ground above the shelter shook like thunder. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the lights flickered weakly. John grabbed his rifle, his hands tense. Max barked wildly, sensing something wrong in the air. Sarah stood close to Leary, shielding her with her arms. "He's here," Elra whispered, her voice cold, not with fear, but with the weight of memory. Commander Vecker had found them, and this time he didn't send drones or machines. This time he came himself. "Why would he come down alone?" John asked, staring at the shaking wall. "Because he believes he's already won," Elra replied. Her face looked pale, but her eyes were filled with fire. "He believes no one can stop him. Not even Earth." Leary stood in silence, watching the door, not blinking. Suddenly, the wall pulsed blue. A strange, deep voice echoed through the shelter. Not through a speaker, not through the walls, but inside their minds, cold and sharp. "Elra, you cannot run forever." John winced, pressing his hands to his ears. Sarah gasped, the sound cutting through her thoughts. Leary didn't move, her eyes focused. "He's speaking from his mind," she said. "He wants us to be afraid." But Elra stepped forward. "No longer hiding. You won't have her." Elra whispered into the air. The voice returned, louder. "She belongs to me," it said, "and if you keep her, I will tear your world apart." John stepped between them. "You'll have to go through me first," he said firmly. There was silence. Then the shelter wall behind them cracked. Not from weapons, not from machines. It cracked like glass under pressure. And through the opening stepped a tall figure in silver armor. His face was smooth, sharp, and cruel, eyes like burning stars. He didn't speak, but everyone felt him. Like a weight pressing down on the soul, Commander Vecker had arrived. Max growled, but backed away. Even the brave dog felt the danger in this man. John raised his rifle, but Elra gently pushed it down. "You can't fight him with bullets," she said softly. "Then what do we use?" John asked. Elra didn't answer. Instead, she walked toward Vecker. Slowly, Leary watched her mother, her hands glowing slightly. "You don't have to go," she said, but Elra turned and smiled sadly. "I do, my light," she whispered, but not to surrender. She stepped in front of her husband, only inches away. "I ran because of what you became," she said. "You don't care about Leary, only what's inside her." Vecker stared at her, then slowly removed his helmet. His face was flawless, cold and empty of love. "She is not a daughter," he said. "She is destiny. She will make the stars kneel, with or without you." Elra slapped him hard. The sound echoed in the shelter, but Vecker didn't flinch. "You were weak," he said. "You still are." Elra stepped back, but her eyes burned. "I'd rather be weak with love than powerful with hate." He raised his hand, and energy crackled from his fingers. Leary screamed, and the lights exploded. Darkness covered the room for a second. Then a flash of light burst from Leary's chest, pushing Vecker back with a force like wind and fire. The shelter trembled. Metal walls bent. Vecker stood again, his armor scorched, so the power has awakened. He said, smiling, "You think that saves you?" But Leary floated now, above the ground. Her eyes were full of light, her voice deeper. "You hurt my mother," she said. "You hurt many. I will not let you take my heart." The ground cracked under her feet. Vecker stepped back, confused. He had seen power before. But this was not power built by machines. This was life itself. Fighting back, he raised his hand again, but Leary didn't move. She only spoke, "Go," she said, "before I become something you cannot control." Vecker's body shook, as if invisible hands were holding him. He dropped his weapon, choking on air. Then, with one final scream, he vanished in a flash of light, gone, but not destroyed. Leary fell to the ground. Weak, Elra caught her, holding her tightly. John and Sarah rushed over, helping them both. The shelter was quiet again. Only the soft breathing of the child broke the silence. "He will come again," Elra said, "but next time. He will not come alone." John looked at the ruined wall. "We need to prepare," he said, "because next time, Earth will be the battlefield." Dark clouds gathered over the forest. Thunder rolled across the sky, but no rain fell. The earth was silent, holding its breath far below, in the damaged underground shelter. John stood near a broken wall. He stared into the trees above, waiting for what would come next. Leary lay sleeping, her breathing slow but steady. Elra sat beside her, gently brushing her hair. Sarah packed supplies quietly, her face pale but focused. The battle had not ended. It had only just begun. Commander Vecker was gone, but not destroyed. "He left to prepare," Elra said softly. "He won't make the same mistake." Twice, John nodded, tightening the straps on his armor. "This time, he'll bring everything he has." He replied. Sarah looked at him, fear in her eyes. "What if we can't stop him?" she asked. John didn't answer right away. Then he looked at Leary and said, "Then we buy her time. Time to choose her own future. Above them, the sky." Burned red for a moment, dozens of ships began entering Earth's atmosphere. They weren't large, but fast and sharp like knives, alien crafts. Unlike anything humans had ever seen, they formed a circle above the forest. "Blocking the sun, they're here," Elra whispered. John turned to Sarah. "Take Leary and run if anything happens to us. I'm not leaving you," she said. "You might have to," he replied. Sarah didn't argue anymore. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the shelter. It came from everywhere, not just in their minds. "This is the end of resistance." The voice said, cold and clear, "Return the child or your planet burns." John raised his gun. Elra stood tall. "No one's burning anything today," John said. Elra touched a hidden panel on the wall. It opened a narrow tunnel filled with soft blue light. "Go," she told Sarah. "Take her now." Sarah picked up Leary and ran into the tunnel. Elra turned to John, her eyes calm. "I won't run this time," she said. "I started this, I will finish it." John nodded. "Then let's make it count." Outside, the sky split open with light. Alien soldiers began to land between the trees, tall, armored, silent, their weapons glowing. John and Elra stepped out of the shelter together. Earth smelled of smoke and metal, but also of courage. John fired the first shot. It hit one of the soldiers straight in the chest. The alien didn't fall, but staggered backward. Elra raised her hands and unleashed a wave of force. It threw 3 soldiers into the air, but more came, dozens, then hundreds. Surrounding the forest, John reloaded. Blood on his face, Elra screamed as energy flowed from her. She fought like fire, wild and free, from the trees. Sarah watched, hidden. She held Leary close, tears in her eyes. "Why can't we just live in peace?" she whispered. Leary opened her eyes slowly. "We can," she said. "If I stop hiding before Sarah could speak." Leary stood up. She walked back toward the battlefield, alone. Sarah tried to stop her, but Leary turned and smiled. "I'm not afraid anymore," she said. "She's becoming." Elra whispered, feeling her near. Leary stepped into the clearing. All fighting stopped. The air went still. The birds stopped flying. The alien soldiers looked at her. Even Vecker, standing at the center, stepped forward. "You returned," he said, smiling cruelly. "Now give yourself to me." Leary didn't answer. She raised her hand, and the ground began to glow. Roots, soil, and light rose like waves beneath. "I'm not yours," she said. "I am no one's weapon." Her body rose into the air. Glowing symbols appeared around her like a ring. A storm of light formed in the sky. The alien army raised their weapons, but none fired. One by one, their guns melted. Their ships fell from the sky without sound. The earth pushed back through her. Vecker stepped forward again, desperate. "Now, this is not power," he shouted. "This is chaos." Leary looked at him. Her voice calm. "No," she said, "this is balance. You took and took. Now the stars will take from you." Vecker screamed, trying to strike her. But his hand passed through her light like dust. Then, with one final breath, he vanished. Gone forever. Leary lowered herself gently to the ground. Her light faded, but something new remained. Peace. The alien soldiers dropped to their knees. Some vanished into the sky, others faded into the wind. John dropped his weapon, breathing heavy. Elra ran to her daughter, falling to her knees. "It's over," she whispered. "You did it." Leary nodded, her voice soft. "No, we all did it." Then she looked to the sky. It's time to rebuild. The forest was quiet again. The sky returned to its soft blue, and the sun peeked through the broken clouds. Birds began to sing as if nothing had happened, but deep beneath the trees, everything had changed. The battle was over, and Earth had survived. John stood near the old shelter, now partly destroyed. He looked around at the fallen trees, the burned grass, the shattered rocks, but he was still alive, and so was everyone he cared about. Max barked softly, walking beside him, tail wagging gently. Sarah came out of the woods, her arms wrapped around Leary. The girl looked tired but calm, her eyes no longer glowing with power, but soft like a child again. Elra followed them, her hand on her daughter's back. There were no words for what had just happened. John walked toward them. He smiled at Leary and opened his arms. She ran into them and hugged him tightly. For the first time, she felt safe not because of her power, but because of the people around her. "You did it," John said, his voice full of emotion. "You saved all of us." Leary looked up. "Not alone," she said. "You helped me. You gave me a place to feel human." Elra watched them quietly. She had spent her whole life running, hiding, protecting. Now, maybe for the first time, she could rest. Sarah took her hand and smiled. "You're home now," she said gently. They spent the next 2 days cleaning up the area. The broken drones were buried under the soil. The burned trees were cut down and stacked neatly. John repaired the roof of the cabin. Sarah cooked warm meals for everyone. Leary helped too. She used small bursts of her energy to heal cracks in the walls. She made flowers grow again near the porch. She even helped Max chase away a raccoon stealing food, and she laughed, really laughed. For the first time, at night, they sat around a new fire. John told old Earth stories. Sarah sang songs from her childhood. Elra taught Leary words in English, and Leary told them what stars looked like from above. "She's changing," Elra said one night. "Becoming more human." John nodded. "That's a good thing." Elra smiled. "Yes, it is. But she will always be more." Sarah looked up at the stars. "Do you think he's really gone?" she asked. Vecker Elra paused, then said, "Yes. But others may come someday," she added. "Others who still chase power." Leary sat quietly beside her. "Roasting a marshmallow, if they do," she said softly. "We'll be ready." John reached over and gave her a gentle high five. Later, when the stars were bright, Leary stood alone outside the cabin. She closed her eyes and placed her hand on the ground. The earth hummed gently. Beneath her feet, she smiled. "I like this place." She whispered, "It feels warm." Suddenly, a soft blue light appeared in the sky. It wasn't a ship or a weapon. It was a signal, a peaceful one, an old beacon from her mother's world. It blinked slowly, as if saying hello. Leary ran. Inside, her eyes wide. "Elra," she called. "There's something in the sky." Elra stepped out, looked up, and smiled. "I know that signal," she said. "It's not a threat, it's an invitation." John and Sarah joined them. "What does it mean?" Sarah asked. "It means not all stars are cruel," Elra replied. "Some still believe in peace." John looked at the blinking light. "Will they come here?" he asked. "Maybe one day," Elra answered, "but not to fight, to learn, to share. Maybe to start again." Leary looked at Sarah and John. "Can we stay here?" she asked, "as a family?" Sarah hugged her close. "You already are," she said. "This is your home now." The next morning, they planted a tree beside the cabin. Leary placed her hands on the soil. The tree grew quickly, tall and strong, with glowing leaves. It would be their reminder of survival, of change, of new beginnings. People might one day ask where it came from, but for now, it was just a tree, and this was just a home. A strange family built from stars and soil, bound not by blood, but by choice. Together, they had faced the impossible, and now they would build something better. Not with war, but with warmth. Not with fear, but with love. The stars above blinked quietly, and the earth below held them close.